what the hell is AEW really doing? What are they thinking? And I think you're inclined to agree with me because we talk about it on the side. But I think you're 100% right now all in. Go figure on the idea that Tony doesn't know how to be a boss, which is something I've said and you've said, we both said, that he's not really doing. He's not being a boss. This is alleged by one CM bitch. I still don't like him. Sorry. Phil came out, said he's just not a boss essentially, and he's not acting like one, especially after he released the backstage footage of CM Punk, Jack Perry getting into a scuffle, and allegedly Tony fearing for his life. And look, he's allowed to fear for his life, sure, whatever. There's going to be some alpha males out there who said, he's a pussy. Sure, whatever. Your opinion. I mean, personally, I wouldn't have been threatened by one Phil Brooks. That's me. But it's just, there's a lot happening right now on the AEW wrestling side, and a lot of people aren't happy, it seems. It's what the dirt sheets are reporting. All these, wrestling news outlets are reporting that it's just, they just don't understand why this would happen, why this would be done, why Tony is doing this. But it seems like he's finally over it. He needed this last thing to get off his chest. But boy, did it just leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth.
Yeah. Did not get the reaction that I have to assume he thought it was going to get, which is
right,
universal praise of everybody being like, yeah, fuck
strong,
CM
powerful,
Punk.
brave.
Here's where I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's so unfortunate to phrase it this way, but this truly felt like the sort of thing Vince McMahon would do, where it was like sometimes something would come up and Vince could not be talked out of it, and usually it was like against his better judgment, and everybody would roast WWE for it. And the parallels are there, man. I mean, I don't, if he's not willing to listen to the elder statesmen around him, Tony Schiavone or even JR,
yeah,
or even Dave Meltzer, like it's worrisome that Tony has reached a point where he's willing to be so obviously stupid or like tone deaf. I truly don't know. I mean, it's a special kind of ignorance to like have this footage. He watched the footage. This wasn't like, this is the other thing. It's like, it's not like he was seeing the footage for the first time along with all of us. Like, he watched that. The Young Bucks watched it. And they said, and they heard CM Punk's whole interview. And they were like, yeah, let's release this. Like, I baffling. Truly baffling. I don't know if this is a combination of the Young Bucks and Tony being like equally bitter and immature. But and then, to take it a step further, the footage goes live, instantly roasted, memed on, dunked on, and then he starts taking it down. He starts copyright striking people. His footage that he agreed to put on the internet, he starts copyright striking and DMCA take down people's videos and getting their channels with strikes and all this sort of stuff.
Yep.
I have no idea. It's really starting to come across like, and I hate to give CM Punk any credit. It is truly starting to come across like this is not a company. This is a group of buddies. Yeah. This is a guy who got a bunch of his daddy's money to start a wrestling club and doesn't have any idea what he's doing. I was going to get to this later, but
Oh,
there's a lot of rumblings that they don't have a new TV deal. And I'm going to be honest, if I was Warner Bros. And I'm obviously paying attention to what's going on, I'm just like, I might let the clock run out on this one. And,
yeah.
you guys can take your product to wherever you want. Go to
He's not good
Fox.
for
Maybe
business.
Fox will give you some money. They're about to have an opening on Fridays.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. You were the indie wrestling champion. Indie wrestling is basically what gave eventual birth to AEW. And we were huge fans of AEW.
We were.
And we admittedly have truly cooled off.
Admittedly, yeah.
As has the company itself.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you think that this is, too much of they've had this obsession with taking shots at WWE, and initially I thought like, oh, the first year or so, like whatever, they're new, they're like, WWE back then was like, it's still an absolute dumpster fire, so like, yeah, dunk on Vince McMahon for sure. But they're still doing it. Like they're still letting like little bits of WWE irk them. And how do you feel about these responses that they've chosen to put forth?
It comes off very petty, very childish. Like I said, it's bad for business. It doesn't look good. It's just like, it's not fun. It doesn't make me want to support a man-child when I've already been doing that with one Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Thank God he's no longer with the company, but now it's like, who's going to be there to take over Tony so we can get him out, or just at least like have someone else. I've been saying this for a long time. He needs to distribute his work. Like someone needs to be like a voice for the locker room. And I'm not just talking about Jericho or Tony Schiavone. Any like an actual person like Mark Henry. He's pretty much a guy behind the scenes. He's pretty much a suit. Mark Henry should be the go-to guy in terms of like talking about the locker room. Look, call me ignorant. I don't know what that title would be, but like something professional. I know Tony basically had an assistant with QT Marshall, but he didn't want that. I don't know if that's, now that QT actually did go back to the company, I don't know if that still remains to be true. He's still like his like assistant essentially, or an executive there. But it's just like he needs to do something, because right now, like, I know some people when they first started working there for the first 2 to 3 years, there was high praise. Tony's the best boss they've ever had. Chris Jericho went as far as to call him one of the better, if not the best boss he's ever had. I guess because of all the creative freedom, which is all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, like you said, this company, and there are people who I respect this opinion, and I think it's a good opinion. It's like, because look, they're probably not there to make money. They're there to give good wrestling, but you can't have good wrestling if you don't have money. If you don't make the big bucks, good wrestling doesn't keep doors open. Not all the time. As we know, fucking WWE didn't produce very good wrestling for a couple of years, but they still thrived.
Yeah.
The company sold for billions. It's better now, thank God.
Yeah.
But you still have to do both essentially to keep doors open, keep the lights on, pay your wrestlers. I guess he can just keep dipping his pot. He can dip his hand into Daddy's money,
Yeah.
because it's not just the Jacksonville Jaguars that brings in the big bucks. It's other things, It's just
I mean,
it's frustrating,
dude. This is a bummer. It's been 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
It just, it's such an unfortunate turn, because I think what makes me so disappointed is like, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this episode. Could be 10, it could be 1,000. We never know with wrestling episodes. But like, this is not an AEW like as a whole, because I think Tony's making it very clear that he's really the only one giving any sort of input, or at least he's the reason anything makes it on television. And most of it's his idea since he's the head booker. I don't know why he insists on still doing that while also trying to be friends with everybody. It really sucks that he's basically sent Edge out there like a week or two ago to like rally the troops, and then a week later like releases this footage and everybody just shits all over the company. And it makes Edge look like a moron. He already feels irrelevant, which is crazy to say that Edge feels just like another guy. But it kind of feels to me like a lot of things are coming to a head. Like, for a long time, we've commented on how AEW really lacks any sort of storylines, or at least like meaningful ones.
Right.
For a long time,
I
their
mean,
women's division was a complete disaster. They have way too many championships. There was a weird booking with Jade Cargill, which we just couldn't understand. She was like 65-0, but she was the mid-card champion. Just there's a lot of strange stuff. The CM Punk John Moxley, the squash match, then he wins it back the next night or a few days later or something. Maybe going too long with both MJF as champion and the like. What, I don't even remember what the name of the guy. You know, the guy who ended up being Adam Cole, the Devil, or something like that. Like, that storyline was just dragged on forever, even though we all already knew who it was. It really does seem like, you know, the Bloodline story, which I hate to use as a comparison because it's like one of the greatest storylines in the history of wrestling. But that story took so many twists and turns and like had input from so many different people. And that's why it worked. Because if one guy booked the whole thing, I just don't see it clicking, because there's so many twists and turns, and wrestling storylines are famous for twists and turns. But if only one guy's making all the calls and basically like not really taking much input from anyone else, it makes it kind of hard to book any sort of like impactful long-term storytelling in like more than one story, which I mean, there's a ton of guys that were either underutilized at AEW. They dragged out the Swerve versus Keith Lee thing. It was really, really hot, and then for some reason Tony just never booked the one-on-one match. I have so many. There were years of questions about booking, and not that we don't have those same questions about WWE from time to time, but far less do I have questions about the booking decisions. And that's probably because WWE has a whole team. Because Triple H is very open to people's suggestions and ideas, and you know, you never know. Sometimes somebody suggests something that you never thought of, and all of a sudden it becomes an incredible direction to take things. And you know, I feel like a lot of AEW storylines are the opposite of how I felt with the Bloodline, which was like every week I was like, where's it going to go? What's going to happen next? And a lot of AEW storylines, I was like, when is this going to be over? This is just dragging on. I don't know. Like, he managed to drag on so many stories. And it's hard to not point the finger at Tony. He's the head of the company.
Yeah, he's approving this stuff. He's saying yes. He's the yes man. He gives final approval.
Yeah.
If you want to deny that, that's not an opinion. It's a fact. People have just talked about it openly. Jericho has said it many times on the podcast. Like, yeah, Tony is the final say. He's like, oh, I brought this to Tony. He didn't like it. Then he tried to convince him with something else. He liked it. So it's there. Like, we know it's Tony. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, the buck
It's like
stops with Tony. No pun intended. Unfortunately, but the buck, the only reason anything makes it on TV is because he wants it to. And sometimes there's a lot of good in AEW. There's a lot of good gimmicks. But I definitely find myself thinking back to like watching that footage, and I remember in the moment when all this was going down. I don't know if we talked about this on an episode or if we were just chatting, but I think we both mentioned like, damn, I kind of want to see CM Punk versus Kenny Omega now. Like that's the match. Like you got to book that match. Those two hate each other. But people hate each other all the time when they work together in wrestling. Matt Hardy and Lita and Edge. That was a disaster of a real life situation.
Yo,
like,
and they exploited that shit.
Dude, Bret Hart and Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels all like dapped up. Like, I refuse to believe that CM Punk and Tony Khan and Kenny Omega and the Bucks couldn't all just get together and be like, damn, there's a lot of money if we book these matches right. Like, let's do it. Like, we're all professionals. Because I truly believe Punk would have done it. Like, as much as we like to shit on him, he puts up when he has to, like when he thinks it's good for business. I can't say that's 100% success rate that he does it every single time, but most of the time he has a history of doing what's best for business. And there are just a lot of examples, and this felt like the biggest one of AEW not doing what was best for business, which is unfortunately a really bad way to run your company if you're not doing what's best for the company. And like, I hate to pick on them, man, but these pictures go viral of these crowds that they're drawing of like nobody. Battle of the Belts was this weekend. We didn't even know. There weren't even any AEW titles defended on the show. That was an AEW thing.
And so our buddy, shout out to you, Roland. He pointed out this past weekend that Kyle O'Reilly got turned on from the Undisputed Kingdom, and I had no idea. And I follow AEW on Instagram and on Facebook, and I got nothing. Nothing. That didn't pop up for me.
YouTube channel, not a single video.
Yeah. Like it didn't pop up for me, and I'm not subscribed to a lot of things. So I'm like it's just my core love of things, sports, which includes wrestling, MMA. I was distracted with watching UFC 300 this past weekend, but still, like, nothing. I got zilch, nothing. It was crazy.
Dude, I was stunned when he mentioned that. I was like,
I'm like, what?
Dude, the Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, I mean, that was towards the end of, like Black and Gold NXT. But that was a hot feud. Like, that was a long time coming.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that angle went down and no one knew.
On a Saturday show that nobody watches that was built off the back of a guy who barely wanted to work there and who wound up getting fired.
Dude, that Collision show,
quitting.
And it's crazy that it was another example of Tony not, I don't want to be insulting, but like not being very smart. Like CM Punk, and we talked about this in the moment when Collision was announced. We were like, this doesn't make sense. You already can't handle having Rampage on. So, like, why are you adding... And it's AEW Dark or Elevation or whatever the fuck they ended up calling it. Like, they canceled that. They added Rampage. Rampage turned into nothing. Turned into, like, WWE Main Event. If anybody remembers when that started off really hot and then just became a, half-hour thing before the SmackDown and Raw shows would go on. CM Punk said in the interview, he was like, I told Tony Collision's not a good idea. Or like, don't put a show, don't add a show just for me where you're going to have a weird brand split that's not a brand split because there's only one brand. And we talked about that when Collision started of like, maybe you should differentiate. Maybe you should add a different title. Maybe you should separate the rosters because certain people like Aleister Black or Malachi or whatever already said like he wasn't going to wrestle on Wednesdays anymore. And if you wanted to watch them, you had to tune in on Saturday. It was like, okay, well, that's exactly how brand splits work. If you wanted to watch someone, you had to tune into the show that they were on. But that's not what Collision was. And I honestly, I couldn't tell you what that show is for. I could not explain to you why that exists. Like currently. I know why it existed originally.
Right.
Which is insane that you're going to give a guy that doesn't get along with anybody his own show. I don't know why it's still on. Aside from the fact that they signed a contract. So WB is just running out the clock.
Yeah. It's frustrating. I keep saying this. It's like, I know I'm gonna be labeled. I'm sure you're gonna be labeled a casual, and that's fine. I don't care, because I am fully committed to what I fell for, and that was independent wrestling. That's what brought me back in. And NXT, which wasn't independent, but it had the feel of independent shows. When AEW was announced, I thought this was a risk, but I was excited, cautiously excited, and they delivered, and they were delivering, and they did fucking Grand Slam, which I've been to twice.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't go to the first one, which is obviously still one of the better shows that they ever made, because they had fucking Adam Cole and Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, excuse me, essentially back in the Indies, quote unquote. Even though AEW is the second largest, wrestling company, at least on the United States side.
Yeah, for now.
For now.
I did want to mention real quickly about the Grand Slam, because we went this past year, and we definitely made mention of the fact that it didn't look like as many people showed up, but we didn't really think much beyond just like, oh, looks like a smaller crowd this year. And like now when I think back and like I think of all the photos I've seen of, which admittedly they show the hard cam side, which is like usually not as filled, because the opposite, like the hard camera, the camera that's facing is all the people that want to be on TV. So if you sit on the hard camera side, you're not going to be on television. So that section is usually not as crowded, but that Grand Slam crowd was noticeably thinner.
Yeah, it was definitely smaller than the previous 2 years.
Yeah. The crowds have gotten worse since then.
Yeah, and that's everywhere. I remember they were doing like house shows. I don't know whatever happened with that. I know
they weren't,
and that was a good idea, because like it was only like a few times a week, if not a couple times of the month.
I think they weren't drawing,
which I'm not surprised about. But I heard it, which is crazy, because they were doing it in much smaller venues, like not the ones that like WWE do for a house show, because like they do fucking random house shows at Madison Square Garden, which is crazy.
Right, that's an insane, like saying house show and then it's at MSG.
Yeah, which is fucking charging like $100 for nosebleeds.
Yeah.
So like even then, like, which was like they had a great setup before, even prior to like doing the second stuff. They had Dark, which was free on YouTube. So you can get people to like for exposure. It was smart. It was good, so you can get people to practice their TV, and just build them up. And that's what the Indies did. It was build up people. You scout them and you sign them. That's what WWE did. That's what AEW was doing. Signing to like these independent wrestlers for temporary contracts. It was like per appearance, and then making them an offer, and then essentially raising them up to be stars. Like Willow Nightingale was recently was on Talk is Jericho podcast, how she was pretty much with Ring of Honor. It was like a good contract for her, but then like AEW asked her to, but as a temporary contract, which was great for her as well, got her the exposure, and then eventually she became full time. And that's a great story, and that's what I want AEW to do, is build up stars. They built her up great. She's benefited that. She's been one of the staples in the women's division. Other people might disagree. Some people might call her an unsafe worker, but I highly disagree. She's a hard worker. She's traveling. She's getting the exposure. She went to Mexico with BCC and wrestled in CMLL, one of the largest Mexican promotion in Mexico, one of the oldest for sure and most popular. and illustrious. So that's great. I love that they're doing that, and it does that for them. It's what CMLL does for their wrestlers, like with like having been attached and having the relationship with New Japan, and their luchadors get the exposure and going out there. That's what I want AEW to do for like doing in America, and that's what they're doing now. Sending their wrestlers out to get the exposure. Granted, it's Mox and all of the BCC, and they don't need the exposure. They're internationally known.
Yeah.
But it helps build. Like, I like that they did that, because now they're creating new fans in Mexico if they hadn't already. If not, they're adding more to that. That's how you do it. You send them out there. You build your brand up again, or continue to do that. And I thought that was great. I saw some of the highlights of the match, and it was great. It was great technical wrestling out there. It was great heel shit. It was the foreign heels versus the local Mexican heroes and legends. So that was great. And I think they could lean into that more if they do that. If they go back to their roots, instead of obsessing over WWE, which is just one person, honestly. It's just one guy.
It's true.
In my opinion. Yeah, like the wrestlers who make mention, like MJF, who used it to make mention of WWE. Even CM Punk leaned into it by calling like MJF like a bootleg Miz or something like that.
Right, yeah.
Like it's there, and it's cheap heat, or it's easy for them.
CM Punk literally referred to WrestleMania as like a buy one get one like half off special or something when he was roasting MJF.
So like exactly. So like, and what are you gonna expect with a company that doesn't have a creative team, essentially, which might help them in the long run to be okay with some things and just filter some things out, keep people in check. At the end of the day, like right now, like AEW is not in the best place right now, in my opinion. It's not because of what they did, mainly because of one man did and his company and his obsession over trying to look good in the eyes of the public and the fans, and it backfired terribly. Tony, it's his company. Obviously, he shouldn't step down or should go. He should just try to just take the criticism and roll with it and learn from it. Do better, be better. Like, there's no point in continuing to fight this uphill battle when it's now against yourself and your fans. Like, you're playing yourself. Congratulations, you played yourself. Like, and that's essentially what happened. But like, I want Tony to. He's in his 40s, I think, but I need him to grow up, man.
Yeah,
and be a boss. Like I respect the shit out of him that like he's like friendly with his wrestlers, his employees. That's great, but you can't be the best friend, cool guy. You just can't. You have to be boss first. Everything else is second. You can be the understanding boss, the sympathetic boss. Oh, it was like, hey, like my cat needs surgery. I can't make the show. Perfectly fine.
right.
Great, awesome. Vince McMahon would tell you like you're a pussy, probably.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure Tony would completely understand. That's the vibes I get.
Yeah.
Me and you have talked about this, like with our favorite commissioner being, I think his name Adam from Adam Sterling is his name. I forget his name.
Oh
for
yeah,
basketball.
Adam Silver. Yeah.
Adam Silver. Excuse me. Yeah, he's like our favorite commissioner ever.
NBA commissioner.
NBA commissioner, pretty chill dude, down to earth guy, great human being.
Yeah.
All qualities I see in Tony, except when it comes to conducting business and keeping his employees in check.
To being a boss.
Yeah.
That's the thing he struggled with since the beginning, man. And
I think so.
I don't know if it's something that he can admit to himself, but it's definitely something that I think there is a much louder contingent of people now agreeing that Tony might be a nice guy. He might be a great person to work for, but he's not a boss. He just lacks whatever that true, like, I'm in charge, what I say goes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. He definitely leans too heavily on being friends with the people that work for him, which it's a fine line. It's like you don't want to be not come off as unapproachable or I don't know, out of touch in the sense that you don't care about your employees. But he definitely is a little too buddy with, admittedly, the people that started the company with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of leads me to something I wanted to ask you. Do you think these AEW originals, Kenny, the Bucks,
Mm-hmm.
do you think they need to go? Do you think that maybe what would help is if AEW, this is purely hypothetical because I don't think Tony's going to sell the company. But do you think they need, like, are we approaching a WWE sort of new era or whatever they're calling it, fresh start, like where it's the people that started the company that are now actively holding the company back? Or do you
I
think
don't
they
think so.
they come out of this in 6 months, we're like, that was silly when we were talking about AEW failing?
I mean, it's tough to. It's hard. It's hard. Like, we have to also think about, All Out and All In were in September. That's not a year ago. We're approaching a year, but it was so successful. It was great. They were great shows.
Yeah.
But then obviously the controversy came out of that, and that's where we kind of just lost it. I mean, yeah, we went to go see Grand Slam and at the end of the month. I think it was in September, right, or October, I forget. And then, like, it's just like, it's for us, like, we've just lost interest. Like, I was excited for that they were doing pay-per-view in New York City. Granted, it was in Long Island,
Right.
and I didn't go. That was at World's End.
Yeah, World's End.
And I just it was a holiday, so I didn't go. But, like, I would have liked to try to seen that. It's just like, I don't think it's Bucks and Kenny are the problem. I really don't. In fact, like, a lot of, like, their power is gone.
Right.
From what I understood. Like,
they
lost
EVPs mostly in gimmick only at this point.
At this point, yeah, they have no power.
Yeah.
I remember when that came out, like, they didn't really have any power anymore.
Yeah.
The last bit of power I think any one of them had was Kenny doing the game, and I don't know if there's a game going to come out after this. In fact, they probably lost a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think they'll sell the company. A merger, sure. Like, it's possible that WWE could buy them, and we'll see something change there. But
I hope not. We need the diversity for competition.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I want the diversity. I want good wrestling. I want these long matches.
So that's what AEW has. They do have great wrestling. They have one of the best rosters of wrestlers in the world. But like you said at the very beginning, that's not enough. It's just not enough. Yeah. There's plenty of indie promotions that you've gone to, that we've gone to shows together, that have great wrestlers. And that's not always enough to keep the lights on. I mean, I know that WWE bought Progress, but, let's be real. Like, if Progress had kept it going for another 5 years, I don't know.
I mean, they definitely wouldn't have survived the pandemic, that's for sure.
It's easier said than done. Just because you have the roster does not mean that, you're selling out arenas. The same way that Vince's focus on entertainment and goofy segments was not what people wanted either. They wanted a balance of the two, where it was like entertaining but also could be serious when it needed to be. And it does feel like we've kind of entered into this, like, okay, by their own admission and like what we've read and heard, the Bucks do not have really any sort of like power within, outside of it's being like veterans.
Yeah.
That CM Punk footage does not go live if Tony says no and they say yes.
Yeah, that's how it seems, and
I can't envision a single thing that gets on television without Tony going, I want it to be on TV. Unless he is like, because he would have known this is going to make me look really bad. So
yeah, like someone. That's the other thing too. Is like, I wanted to touch him up. That's what I was getting at. Is like, someone has to be in his ear saying this is a bad idea. Someone has to be telling him, like, he needs a right hand man. He needs a left hand man. He needs someone in his face. He needs a team. I don't think he has a team. If it is, it's very disorganized and dysfunctional. To me, from an outsider looking in, it looks disorganized, and nothing more says that than the release of this footage.
Dude, you saw
like,
the still frames of like Tony Schiavone, like head in his hands. He's just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah,
so
dude has PTSD.
Right, like, and it really makes me, I hate these Vince McMahon comparisons, but it's like Vince was known for having a circle of people that would agree to whatever he said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if Tony Schiavone is ringside when this footage is going live and he is just ashamed, it looked like he wanted to crawl under the announcer's table. Who on earth could Tony get in there who he would listen to? Because whoever is in his inner circle, which we assume is like Tony Schiavone, maybe Chris Jericho, maybe Mark Henry, Big Show, I don't fucking know, Edge, Christian, I have no idea. He's not listening to them. Like whoever's in this circle, he does not think that they know better than he does.
Which is shocking.
Which was a huge Vince McMahon issue, was that he always thought he was the smartest one in the room.
Yeah.
And so if Tony, even if he does have this circle of people that he can delegate stuff to, and that, you know, they have meetings and discuss like the directions to go in, he clearly, when it really counts, he thinks that he knows better than they do.
Right.
That's a real problem.
Yeah, that's how it comes off.
Like, there's no way that his inner circle, no pun intended, of Chris Jericho's fucking that's another one that they ran into the goddamn ground. There's no way Tony's inner circle was a bunch of people saying, this is a great idea, man, I say we post the footage. There's just no, and if they are, you have to fire all of them. You have to get rid of all those people. Like,
yeah,
but like, I guess what it is, like, both of those hypothetical scenarios are really bad.
Yeah.
It's either Tony says, you guys don't know what you're talking about, I'm the smartest one here, run the footage. Or everyone around him is like, run the footage, man, it's going to make you look like $1 million bucks.
Do it.
Yeah, Tony. Like,
I posted it. I did it.
How do we get here, man?
I don't know.
How did we get here?
I don't even know what this episode is anymore.
This was the same guy who said he was going to be a backstage only guy. Never going to be on television.
I mean, he's like very on and off. But like, yeah, I would like for you to just stay behind there.
How do we so let's think positive. Let's try to be proactive here.
Sure.
They've got a pay-per-view coming up this weekend. If anyone even remembers at this point. Which, again, that was another thing. Nobody involved was like, hey man, maybe let's not run the footage. Not because it's going to make you look like a total moron, but because it's going to take all the focus off this pay-per-view that we're building to. You know, with like one of the most desired wrestling dream matches of all time. And instead, all anyone's going to be talking about is how you made CM Punk. You got him over on your show. He doesn't even work for the company anymore.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead, what is there a solution here? Do we think this is going to run its course and AEW will be fine 5 years, 10 years from now? We'll be looking back like, man, those were some rough waters, but glad we got past it. Or
I hope so.
You think that this irons itself out?
That's the optimism in me. The realist in me is like, this adds on to the piling issues, like you pointed out at the beginning, where it's like the rumors are that they had an opt out essentially, I think, from their contract, and like it was, or not an opt out, but like they basically, the network can pick it to choose if they want to pick it up again. It sounds like that option hasn't been exercised just yet.
Yeah, based on Tony recently referenced it on Twitter and made it sound like, I mean, the worst case scenario of what he made it sound like is they're just going to let the contract expire, and best case scenario is like they haven't made up their minds yet.
Mm.
Neither of those is
So
great.
neither of those is great.
Not
But
ideal.
hey, so let's think optimistically. If that did, in the sense that in the scenario that it were to expire, or it's either that they didn't exercise a contract. Hey, YouTube's free essentially. There was an issue at one point a couple years ago where wrestling was kind of being demonetized, which sucked.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was
That's a
really
good
weird.
point. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I remember because it was my indie days, man. I was watching a lot of independent wrestling on YouTube.
That was
And
so
it was
strange. Yeah.
it was very strange. But it looks like it's okay now.
Yeah, well, then they realized that WWE was like one of like 3 channels with 100 million subscribers, and they were like, "Well,
Yeah.
all right."
And I also, honestly, I think they weren't being demonetized because they had also advertised. I don't know. Not gonna get into it.
Yeah.
But like YouTube's free.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people who have YouTube. I have YouTube. I'll gladly watch the show on YouTube again.
Yeah.
We want them to be streaming. Maybe they might just move streaming too and go beyond Warner Brothers Discovery. Maybe that's the new deal. I like how you mentioned like it's like this will iron itself out in 10 years. That's the optimistic person in me.
I would love for that to happen.
I would love for that to happen too. I want them to continue and putting on great matches and continuing to create great talent.
Yeah.
And build great talent in 10 years. Hook and Nick Wayne will be back in main eventing all in, all out 10, 12, I don't know. That'd be great. Those guys have a lot of potential.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like we should take a moment here. Like, it takes a long time to develop talent. Like, you could go back to pretty much anyone who, outside of, I don't know, maybe Hulk Hogan, anyone who like was essentially a main eventer from the very beginning. Like, everybody hated The Rock.
Sure.
Stone Cold had a horrible gimmick when he first started. The Undertaker had one of the most bizarre gimmicks ever when he first got going. No one even gave a shit about that WrestleMania streak until it was like 12 matches in.
Word.
Like Jay, no one gave 2 shits about which one of the Usos was Jay and which one was Jimmy. And now Jay's a main eventer. Sami Zayn had a whole bunch of ups and downs at WWE. Like, it takes a long time to make main eventers. So, it's easy to look at WWE now and be like, oh my God, look at all these big names that they've got. These guys could all draw, tons of people that just want to see them wrestle. It takes a long time to get there. There's no reason why, it might sound silly now to be like, Hook? Who's going to want to watch Hook versus, this guy in 10 years? Are you kidding me? Like, I don't know. If you told me if I was going to want to watch like Jey Uso challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship 10 years ago, I would have been like, what? Which one is Jay? The same with Roman Reigns. People fucking hated this guy for years. It wasn't until 3-4 years ago that he became one of the most popular heels of all time. Like, they booed him when he was a babyface, and they cheered him when he was a heel. But wrestling is funny, man.
Wrestling's funny like that.
Yeah, it takes time, and sometimes the right gimmick or the switch doesn't flip for a little while, and then once it does, it's runaway train. The same way that people that are super over, like, look, if I would have told you 5 years ago that Johnny Gargano was going to be the face of WWE. I would have said the same thing about Keith Lee when they were both in NXT. Probably would have said it about Matt Riddle. 0 for 3. So, and look, WWE, at least Triple H thought the same thing. He put both titles on Keith Lee. And then Vince fucking jobbed him out once he got to the main roster, which happened a lot. But, the people that are on top, it doesn't always take much for them to fall off. This is why people are clamoring for Swerve to get a shot, because, you kind of see with LA Knight where he's still popular, but he's not as popular as he was.
No, Swerve is still really popular.
Same with Sami Zayn. And so when someone like Swerve gets hot, it's like, dude, rock it, put it on him, do it.
Yeah.
This could be your next big star. Because when we do think 10 years ahead, Kenny won't be there, Bucks won't be there, Adam Page, I don't know, maybe. You got to think like company's going to look different in 10 years. And
for sure, if they're around.
Right, exactly. Like WWE, I think year to year you see how different things are, man. A year ago,
Sure.
Jay and Jimmy were tag champions fighting Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And a year later they're fighting each other at WrestleMania. Like
Mm-hmm.
the passage of time in wrestling is very strange. And if you really are like, determined to be a success story, you got to have the longevity. As much as people dunk on TNA, they're still around.
Still around, but like with that, like they've alienated their roster, you know. But
Well,
you
with
know,
that
and
most recent,
people believing. Yeah, but like that.
correction, yeah.
Yeah, but like look at what's happening there, and now they got people talking. Once they moved over to TNA, they switched back to TNA, but then their whole roster was like, this, what you guys are doing kind of sucks now. We're gonna go, and they've lost some of their main talent
Ups and downs.
and ups and downs, and like hopefully they survive this, but like the recent success might have been short lived now.
Like,
And that's
yeah,
the funny thing about running companies in wrestling. And like to your point, it was like it's hard to build stars up, and TNA built some great stars, and now there might be running low on them.
I do have a
Whereas like
question.
yeah, one sec though, like
Oh yeah,
one
yeah,
thing
no,
though
go
is
ahead.
AEW though, like to your credit, is like they've created also talent that people never even heard of and built them up. Like Orange Cassidy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is just like he's just a go getter. Fucking Darby Allin, like they did the three
Yeah,
pillars. Now currently the three pillars are all out or hurt or exiled. I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
Or like sorry, excuse me, the four pillars. So like they just show you they can do it. They can build, and the success came out of nowhere. It just came from out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere. It's because fans really like just connected, and that's what when you like you said, when you find that connection, strap a rocket on them, send them to the moon, or keep putting them out there on TV. That's what happened with Orange. They just put him on TV a lot. They gave him a mid card title that he helped build up. It works. It helps. It's possible to keep building stars. It's just a matter of like how do you perform with what you have? And Tony has a lot to perform with, and I feel like he's not utilizing enough. He has so much star potential, just like in WWE. They have so much star potential, but they flub it sometimes. NXT was full of fucking killers, and now a lot of those killers are in AEW. But now at AEW, they're not doing much, or they're hurt, which is maybe not their fault. But it's just like it's there. The potential is always there, and we want them to succeed. But it's frustrating when you're doing shit like what Tony's done.
So
yeah,
what I wanted to ask is, do you think that AEW, and I guess again this kind of falls on Tony, although look, if Okada and Will Ospreay are free agents, you'd be an absolute fucking idiot to not sign them.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that over the years, so this is more cumulative, has there been an over reliance on outside talent at the expense of, like, when AEW first started, it really was the idea of the four pillars, and we joked about it when they had that match with MJF, which was a phenomenal match, except that the other three pillars in that match were totally irrelevant. Like none of them had done shit in the company. I think even, what was it, like, none of them were even on the previous pay-per-view. And I don't know, it just makes me think, like, I love a good debut, right? We're wrestling fans.
Yeah.
We're all surprise debut sluts. We love it. We love that shit. That mystery music hits. The fucking Titantron goes off. We're like, oh my god, this guy is in the company. But it does sometimes come at the expense of younger talent, up and coming talent that might have had a path to a certain spot on the card that has that path blocked by somebody else who's just more popular and sells more tickets and more merch. But at the same time, it takes the opportunity away from someone who maybe that person was the next John Cena, but you never gave them a shot. So you'll never know. I do wonder, like, do you think that AEW, as much talent as they have, has Tony kind of potentially overlooked people because he is so fascinated with outside talent. Sometimes rightfully so. Other times we're sometimes questioning, like, did you need that guy to be in
Yeah.
AEW? Like, did you need Andrade? I
Yeah.
mean, it's cool that you brought him in, but like, what were you gonna do with him? Seemingly, I mean, that was the other thing that started happening, is like they'd bring these people in with a seemingly no plan. They
Mm.
just bring them in. They get the pop, and then they wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. I agree, yes and no. Like, just be smart about it. You didn't need Jeff Hardy.
Right.
Nobody needs Jeff Hardy. like he's and when he was with them, immediately he screws that up. Got in trouble.
Yeah. So many
while
times.
with them.
So many times.
So, and that's on both ends. You know, he screwed up. And like, there's only so many chances you deserve and get. But like, I'm happy he's wrestling now and doing something. But like, you didn't need Jeff Hardy on there. You didn't really need Edge, but when at the time, man, it was great. We thought it was a game changer. It clearly wasn't that much for a little bit. I mean, he's still having good matches. He's not having really any bad matches.
No, Edge is great.
Which is
Edge
great.
is awesome.
It's just like, there's like, yeah, some people you didn't, like Parker Bordeaux.
Right.
He barely was on NXT. You didn't need to sign him.
Yeah.
Unless he was going to be used as a jobber. And even then, and now he's gone. Like there's people like you definitely don't need. If anything, sign more women. You need to bolster that women's division.
Yeah.
You need to bolster the women's division. Mercedes Moné, great signing. Hopefully it truly starts to form the women's division, even though it was always there to begin with. When you had Thunder Rosa, you had Athena,
Yeah.
Britt Baker. Like, come on, like you have great women's wrestling there, and even some who are unknown and who deserve to be on television. So yeah, it's all about using what you have already. Maybe you didn't need Keith Lee, but selfishly, we both wanted Keith Lee to like be to go on the run he had NXT. It's what we deserve as fans, essentially. And I'm being selfish, but like now looking back at it, if we knew that this was going to happen, don't sign him. But that's not to his. And again, that's I guess not his fault because he's just not been healthy. So that's tough. But Swerve, it's been like Swerve has been great. At the time, I did question it. Like, do we need Swerve? Maybe let him build his name back up after kind of just. And it's like that's the other thing too. Like some of the releases and free agents that come aren't that hot. Like Miro, when he got let go,
Yeah.
he wasn't as popular because he was popular. The highest was Rusev Day, and it just went all downhill because they refused to. Because Vince was in charge, and he still signed with the company, not doing anything. Apparently, I don't know if he's hurt. I forgot, but you don't need him. You don't need him. CJ Perry's with the company. She's not wrestling. I mean, I guess it's a good mouthpiece, but I don't see that. But yeah, like who's a big name that could if the War Dogs became free agents on the Bullet Club side in Japan, would love to have them somewhere else so we can see them constantly, and if they keep the name too. I think it's called the War Dogs. I forget. But yeah, like that. Like if the IP for Bullet Club somehow became available, Tony, buy it. I will forgive you, and then just bring Bullet Club to AEW. But let's face it, like Bullet Club is pretty much a borrowed name, and they have a relationship with New Japan, which again helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
use the toys that you have, Tony. That's all we ask for.
Yeah, I hate to give like a baseball analogy, but it does feel like there's like some teams in baseball that give their prospects a chance, and they just run with it, and they're like, "Hey, we're hoping, we're a smaller market, we don't have as much money to compete with these other, big machines.
Yeah.
So we're gonna trust the young guys and see what they can give us." And then there's other teams out there that are like, no, fuck the prospects. Like, either get rid of all of them or we're signing people that are going to block them anyway, so who cares? We're here for stars. We're not here to let anyone develop. And it feels like, I mean, the worst example of that is our New York Mets, like last year, that spent the entire season like kind of trusting the prospects, but not really, but still having these old superstars that they were like counting on to take them into the promised land. And, you know, Tony had a lot of great prospects, and it seemed like at every opportunity signed outside people, and then started doing it to the point where he was blocking the people that he previously signed of like getting shit to do. Like Malachi Black, we were so hyped. What has he done in AEW?
Trios
Like,
title, not even a mid-card title. Which
dude,
I
you
get
could...
why to leave. I get it.
Yeah. Jay White, Switchblade, there's another one.
Man.
He's not going to do anything.
The Wrestle Talk boys, especially Ollie, has just been like, what are you doing to poor Jay White?
I'll tell you, dude, Jay White's not going to do shit in AEW.
It seems that way.
I mean, now that he's got Will Ospreay, now that he's got Okada, that's it for Jay White, mid-card, at best.
At best.
Like, you're not getting back to the main event. Yeah. Well, we have no solutions.
Yeah.
Clearly. I don't know. I really want AEW to right the ship and succeed, but I think I am becoming increasingly nervous that the reason it won't is because of the guy running the whole company, which makes me really nervous because that's the way I felt about WWE for a very long time. And I never thought that would come up with AEW because it seemed like Tony just was pressing all the right buttons. But I don't think that's the case anymore. And the worst part is that AEW had actually been doing pretty well this year, to be completely honest. I think the only people that thought it still sucked or like was mid or whatever probably hadn't been paying attention for the last like 3 or 4 months, but AEW has been doing pretty well. They did a great job with Sting's last match. Yeah, like MJF, I thought had a phenomenal title run up until, you know, the end where he was injured anyway, so whatever. And Joe has been a great champion.
Yeah, the run.
I love Joe as champion.
The rivalry he's had with Swerve and something again that's taken away because of all this is the fact that we may crown a new champion this weekend. But all of the bullshit.
Right, we probably should. It should be Swerve.
But let's not
yeah.
bore the people anymore with our 1-hour tangent.
The ramble, classic ramble episode. Yeah. Well,
thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Yeah. That's all for this episode of the Three Amigos podcast, and tune in to AEW's Dynasty pay-per-view this Sunday. I don't know. I don't know what day the shows are on anymore.
But we'll catch you in the next one. Beautiful.
Oh, it's on Sunday because of Collision.
Yes.
Because of Collision. Right. Because of the new fucking show that he started. He had to move all the pay-per-views. All right. Cancel Collision. AEW can stay on, but cancel Collision. That show's so stupid. Yeah.
Go to bed.
All right, everybody. Go to bed.